writing in series is the biggest that,
Yeah.
again, I was like, "Oh, no, I'm not." You know?
Right.
And actually, it's funny because after I wrote A Deal with the Devil, which was kind of like my breakout book, and when I finished it, I was like my publicist was like, "All right, so what's next?" And I was like, "I'm gonna write about vampires in the 1800s." And she's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. See, you got this one thing that actually made you money. Why don't we stick with
Yeah.
that?"
Welcome to the Shine Onion Podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show, we have
Elizabeth O'Rourke. And I'm
Yes, we do.
laughing because I hit record, and as I was saying it, there was this little delay, and then Zoom said, "This recording is in progress." And I was like, "Progress podcast? Oh no, what are we doing?" So I guess we're not
so professional.
I guess we're not usually that quick off the draw. Anyway.
No, but y'all, this episode, you're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Mhm.
We just finished recording it. It was so fun. Elizabeth
Mhm.
is a friend of mine. I've known her since 2017,
Mhm.
and she's hilarious, but she's also just really such a great writer, and she has had a series take off and really be her breakout series and the Devil series, but it's a great episode.
Mhm. Yeah, so we talked to her about how she broke out and
Yeah.
what she's done, for marketing and how things have changed
Yeah.
and what she would do differently now if she's
Yeah.
starting off again.
Yeah.
So really good.
Yeah.
Really
All
good
the
interview.
stuff. And one thing we didn't get to talk about, and we were talking
Yes.
about afterwards, is she has a book coming out in May, and she has written the whole thing in dictation. She dictated it, and the whole process, start to finish, was 30 days.
Send it to
So,
her editor.
yes, she sent it to her
Dictation
editor in 30 days. Yeah.
to the
So,
editor, yeah. And we were talking about strengths, and she is number one intellection. And as an intellection person, I totally understand you have to think about things and,
yeah.
mull them over before you're ready to write. And sometimes that really slows us down.
Yeah.
And she said, Becca Symes said, what if it didn't take you so long to write a book? What if you could do it faster?
Yeah.
And so she experimented with that. And that was very interesting to talk about.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you're going to love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's been going on with you?
Well, I've been gathering up tax stuff, and that's just so exciting and interesting. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Awful. Yeah.
Okay, so the narration is done for the audiobook.
Yeah.
So that book is like almost through the process.
Great.
So that's good. Almost. So then once I get it back, I can start thinking about how I'm going to launch it.
Right.
And let's see if we've done anything else. Oh, I found out I had a book box that wants to put the first book of the High Society series in the book box. So that was exciting. Yeah. She does several boxes. She does a true crime box.
Oh, really?
Cozy box. And she has a ton of merch and stuff. So we're going to talk to her later. So that'll be fun.
Yes.
And interesting and really, like tips for book boxes if you're interested in doing something like that. Maybe just a one-off, not doing a whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, like that is about it.
Right.
What about you? What have you got going on?
Not much. Y'all, this is Thursday. My entire week is today. We have 2 podcasts. I have an appointment after the podcast, and then I have an online appointment today. I mean, then I'm going to pick my grandson up. Like everything happened today.
It's all right. Most of it's writing related.
Right.
With
Right.
podcast and all your stuff. But, as far as I have not gotten any words on the page today either to make you feel better.
I haven't, because I am actually meeting with Becca Mysort this afternoon, the book fairy.
Yes, we have a podcast interview with her,
we
actually, if people are interested.
Exactly. And so, I was saying last week that I needed to, I just realized after listening to that Spa Girls podcast that there are some things I needed to set up. And I decided to contact Becca and have her help me set that up, because I'm not good at that. Like, I'm not good at setting up something for in the first book for the third book, I don't feel like. And so she can help me with that. And I just didn't feel like I should write anything more until I talked to her, and I couldn't get on her calendar until today. So literally, I have been writing. I feel like I've had kind of a hard, just emotional week. Missing my sister a lot. I don't know why. Nothing in particular, but you know how grief is. It
Yeah.
just whips in and gets you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that could be why. The weather's been weird, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, mostly it's just me. I'm assuming it's just me. Um, I guess that's it. Not much. Just not much. So we'll we'll move on from me
Mm-hmm.
this week. I'm not very
Well,
interesting. And we'll
you're
what
making progress, and
um
you're making progress. That's the main thing. And I also want to mention that we do have a couple of our
oh
email
yes, yes, we
text.
do.
So someone from Anaheim, California said, FYI, Oprah does still have a book club. So when we talked to Catherine, she mentioned that I think she meant that she doesn't have the book club associated with the her Oprah Winfrey show, right? That was
Yeah, yeah,
when
yeah,
that was the big deal. So
yeah.
I did not know she still had a book club.
I didn't either.
Yeah. And we have another one that says, not sure if you're still taking these, but I'm listening to the pod and the Fresh Ideas episode. I'm a newer writer and I love this podcast and always learn so much. I love the idea of hearing your suggestions to new authors and their work. I would love to hear even more of your backstories. It's nice to hear how others got through a tough spot that you may currently be in. But love the pod and don't want it to go anywhere. So that's from
Oh,
Elizabeth.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we
we're still getting a couple of, suggestions and ideas, and we appreciate it. It's
yeah.
really, I mean, I feel energized. Do you feel
I do
better
too.
after
Every
talking
time
to
we get
everybody?
one, yeah, and every time we get a text, I'm like, yes. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know. It just makes my day. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're wondering if we read those, we do absolutely read
Mm-hmm.
them. So send them in if you want. But yeah, we love y'all. We are glad you're here, and we hope you're being productive and successful.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And so I think that is all we have this week, right?
yeah, yeah. It is. So we should get on with the podcast because it's amazing.
All right. Yeah, I agree. Here is Elizabeth. Well, today we are really excited to have Elizabeth O'Rourke with us. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
We are so happy you're here. I've been wanting to get you on for a while, so that's great.
Yeah. Elizabeth O'Rourke has a bunch of degrees she does not use and gave up working as a medical writer to craft grumpy alpha heroes and the flawed women who love them. When not writing, she likes to spend time with her 3 kids who are now teenagers and wish she'd find a different way to spend her time. I love that bio.
Me.
It's so
It's
good.
so true to life.
I know it. So tell us how you got into writing, Elizabeth.
I mean, to be honest, writing was like the only thing I was ever any good at.
Mm.
I went to grad school for psychology, and I was a terrible therapist. I hated it, and I was really bad at it. And so I had this journalism degree from undergrad, and just went into medical writing because I hated being a therapist. And like I said, I was terrible at it. And then I knew that I was going to be getting a divorce, and I figured it was my last chance to write a book. Like everybody always says, like, "Oh, I want to write a book," and I had said that for like a long time, but then I realized I was going to be working full time and have 3 really little kids, and I was never going to get that time again. So I wrote a book, and it just happened to do really well, and so
Okay,
I stuck with it.
that's great. And when was that?
That was 2013. I
Okay,
wrote
yeah.
Undertow in May and published it in August. And it just happened to do kind of well.
We talked to a lot of people who do like the long term, takes them a while to build. So it's nice to hear about somebody who's just did really well right out of the gate. So that's awesome.
Well, I mean, I think that I got really lucky because back in 2013, BookBub was relatively new, and I had read like that David Gogren book, and I didn't know what BookBub was, and
Yeah.
it said try to get a BookBub, and so I did, and I got it. And nowadays, it's like you have to be
Yeah.
like Jeff Bezos to get a BookBub, like
Yeah.
it's so hard.
Yeah.
And they were much more successful then, so I I got it through no merit of my own, and
Well, you wrote the book, so
Yeah,
there,
exactly.
you
You
had
can do
something
a
to
few
do with
things.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what is your definition of success?
So I mean, I feel like it's kind of a moving target because there was a time in my life when it was just to write a book and to write a good book. And then like once I got that, it was, to get like a traditional publishing deal. And once I got that, what that would no longer felt like success. And then it was like to see my books in Target, which is about to happen. And
Mm.
so now it's to see my books in airports. And
Mhm.
once I see my books in airports, I'll be like, yes, I'm not a success until I have a Netflix series. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's always going to
Or
be a
see
moving
them in
target.
space, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I'm
It
never going to feel like a success, and I've
yeah.
accepted that. So,
It's good to have goals, though.
It
yeah.
is. It is. Well, what do you wish you'd known about writing and craft? Probably not a lot because you have always written.
You know, um, no, I mean, I really didn't know, like, even from right through my first couple of books, like how important story structure was.
Oh.
Um, and and I mean, I feel like I got kind of lucky in that my first couple books didn't divert from like what you're supposed to do too much.
Mhm.
But if you had told me back early on that like how important story structure is, I would have been like, that's just what some writing person says. Like,
Right, right,
like you can't chain me in,
right.
I'm gonna do my own thing. But I think that we're really wired to expect the structure of the story to go a
Mhm.
certain way in movies and in books.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And when you don't do that for your audience as an author, you leave them feeling really underwhelmed. So I'm much more committed to like, okay, it's
Mhm.
70 to 80%. I need to do this. And it's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, whereas I just kind of thought it was all, BS back in the day.
Yeah. I think I knew you. Uh, that's when we met, you sort of still felt that way a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
was just like, I'm just going to do what I want. I mean, I
yeah,
felt like that about marketing too, and it really didn't pan out for me. But I thought I was going to write what I want and I was going to market the way I wanted, which was not to do any marketing at
yeah,
all. And
mm,
yeah, none of that worked. So,
yeah.
Well, let's talk about marketing. What
okay.
do you wish you'd known about marketing?
Oh my gosh, so much. I mean, I honestly I really thought that if you just wrote a good book, then it would do well. And if you didn't write a good book, it wouldn't do well. And that's how it was going to break out. And
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with it, right? And so when I started out, I wasn't on Facebook. I didn't run ads. I didn't like go to any of these book signings. Like I was just kind of completely out of the loop. I didn't have a PR until 2017, 2016. I didn't run ads until 2017. So I really wish that I had gotten going with all of that a lot earlier in a newsletter. I mean, I didn't start doing a newsletter regularly until, oh my gosh, a year ago, 2 years ago. Like all these things that you like, everybody has said for years, like, oh, you've got to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, do I though? And so, yeah, I should have. I should have done all those things.
You're questioning the premise, which is always good, but
Right.
sometimes
There's
you have,
nothing wrong with that. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
And I'm still questioning the premise of a lot of stuff, but those are things I wished I had not questioned the premise.
yeah. Well, what assumptions did you make at the beginning of your writing career, and looking back, did they turn out to be right or wrong?
I think I've always had like an unearned confidence in my own abilities to do stuff. So
Yeah.
I really did always think like, oh, this is going to turn out and I'm going to be able to support myself.
Mhm.
And when I look back on it, I'm like, that was crazy. That was absolutely like, I had no reason to believe that, and I still don't know why I did, but I remember my mother being like, because I was going through this divorce, and my mother saying like, "I think you need to go back and finish your PhD," and like, she was really worried about my security, and I was
Yeah.
like, I think it's gonna work out." And like, and I was like, "And why are you being so unsupportive?" And now I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can totally get it." If my
Makes
daughter
sense.
was like, I'm just gonna focus on my writing, and I think it's gonna turn out," I'd be like,
Yeah.
let's go get your PhD.
I love that,
Yeah.
though. I love that
Yeah.
blind confidence.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that and also I really like I said like I really thought that like if you wrote a good book it was just all going to work out for you.
Mm,
And but like we've all seen that like there are some really bad books that hit
yeah,
like the top 10,
yeah,
and there are really amazing books I've seen that I'm like that I read years ago, and I'm like I'll go and I'll check and I'll be like, "What? Has this book taken off?" And it's still only got like 20 reviews on Amazon. And it's like
mm,
one of the best books I've ever read.
right, right.
So
Hmm.
it really like honestly, like how well your book does often has nothing to do with the
Mhm,
quality of the book.
mm-mm.
And that's not something that I would have thought was true a decade
No,
ago.
Hmm.
and that's sad because that's not anything you can control. I mean, you
Mhm.
can control the quality of your book, but you can't control the other stuff. So,
Mhm.
I think the skills that often will make you like a success financially are not related to your writing ability. They're
no.
related to your
Mhm.
like ability to market.
Well, what's the most important lesson you've learned, do you think?
Oh. Um, it always varies. I mean, right now the thing that I'm still trying to learn is that you don't have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, by that same token, like what I just said was that I should have said yes to a bunch of stuff that I didn't. And like I remember when people were saying, "Oh, this new act TikTok, you've got to get on there," and I was like, "Ugh, I'm not doing that," and I still don't do that because I
Yeah.
don't want to. But
Exactly.
but like I think as writers, there's always this fear of turning any opportunity down, right? Because we've all like been
Mhm.
scrambling for so long that like you get invited to a signing or you get asked to do a book box or something like this, and every single one of these things, there's a cost to of your time that you don't
Mhm.
factor into this. You're like, oh, I've got to say yes to this, but even something small like a book box, it's like if you've got to sign like 3,000 tip-ins,
Hmm.
that's 4
Mhm.
solid days that you're not writing. And if you're
Hmm.
doing a book signing, like, like their signings are great and you get to talk to your author friends and, they're
Mhm.
wonderful opportunities, but you also like, you have to factor in like, okay, it's going to be a week of prep. I'm probably going to get COVID while I'm there and I'm going to not work for the week after. Like even if you
And the
don't get
travel
COVID,
time and all that,
yeah, like
yeah.
it's a lot of money, and even if you don't get sick, you're exhausted at the end of it, so you're losing. So I think that that's the thing that I'm kind of trying to like focus on now is really looking at like what is this opportunity costing me instead of feeling
Hmm.
like I have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What is the benefit? You're also an introvert's introvert. And so
Yeah.
I'm sure I know things like that really drain you.
Oh
So
yeah.
even if you don't get sick, you are probably burnt out for a while
I'm
after.
I am wiped for a week after a
Hmm.
signing.
Yeah.
And also I'm like so like hyped up the whole time on like caffeine and
Yeah.
my system is destroyed when I finish. So
I understand
Well,
that.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, what's the biggest change you've had to make in your thinking?
um about writing or
Anything. Yeah.
marketing.
Writing, marketing, just this business in general.
Um, I think that the one thing that I've tried to do more of in the past couple of years, it's yet another thing. I think the whole story of my entire writing history is like me thinking that I could ignore something and then realizing I can't ignore it. But
Yeah.
like tropes, like I
Yeah.
was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to write what I want to, and
Right.
but the tropes really do make the difference in whether or not your book sells.
They do.
And writing to some extent writing to trope and thinking a little bit about what that trope is going to be even before you sit down
Mhm.
instead of just being like no my inspiration comes first and
Yeah.
um, it really that's going to make the difference
Right.
between like a book that hits the top 100 and a book that no one reads so
Right. Right.
Well, so how deep do you go with the tropes? If you were going to write like an enemies to lovers or a friends to lovers, how do you, besides just the main concept, how do you flesh that out at all before you get going?
I mean, I'm never gonna be, well, I should say this, but I'm probably never gonna be somebody who's like, these are gonna be my 10 micro tropes or whatever. Um, but But yeah, I do think in advance, like, okay, it's enemies to lovers, and what do I want? How am I gonna like? How will this relationship be packaged? Like, is this an
Mhm.
age gap? Is this,
Mm.
and I just make sure that it's like palatable somehow.
That's really great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, I think, later.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of people who listen who are newer authors. So if you were starting over today, what would you do differently? Because the market has changed. Things are different than they were,
Yeah.
a few years ago.
Um, and this is something that again I should have done back in the day, and I didn't think I had to. But you really do have to publish. Like I feel like you have to publish pretty consistently. And if I was going back in time, I would force myself to like put stuff out a little faster than a lot faster than I did. Because my first couple of years, like I published a book in 2013, and then like 2014, and then I waited 2 years, and I was just kind of like, no, it'll be good when the time is right, and like you can't have that kind of thinking like
right.
I think financially like what is going to do best for most people is to like kind of spit them out like
Mhm.
every 4 months, like whatever you can do. I'm a slow writer, so I can only do like 2 to 3 a year, but whatever your capacity is to do it fast and to write in series.
Mhm.
Writing in series is the biggest that,
Yeah.
again, I was like, oh no, I'm not. You know?
Right.
And actually, it's funny because after I wrote A Deal with the Devil, which was kind of like my breakout book, and when I finished it, I was like, my publicist was like, "All right, so what's next?" And I was like, "I'm going to write about vampires in the 1800s." And she's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! See, you got this one thing that actually made you money. Why don't we stick with
Yeah.
that?"
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of this is thanks to Nina Grinstead.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we
Well,
kinda have to be pulled back in.
yeah, rein her
Yes.
in. Yeah.
I would still be making 0 money if it wasn't for Nina.
Well, we're gonna talk about that your breakout book because you did write kind of all over. I mean, all
Yeah.
over the place in that you
No,
wrote really emotional, dramatic books. Heavy, some of them sort of heavy. Then you had your time travel series, which is so great. Um, I love that. I love that series, but they were not romantic comedies, and they were
right.
they were not.
Yeah.
Um, you are a hilarious person. I know that. I mean, it's just
Thank
you're just so funny, and but when you started writing Deal with the Devil, I got to read,
you.
like, a
Yes.
very early edition of it, and I was like, "This book is so great." Like, it is so you, and your voice comes through so clearly in it that I was like, "This is gonna be great." And so you switched genres. So what do you wish you'd known about switching genres?
I mean, the funny thing is like, so I kind of switched genres with the parallel series and like,
Well, that's true too. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
on the one hand, I'm like, from a financial perspective, sometimes it really doesn't work out for you. Like the parallel series, the whole entire 4 book series that I spent a lot of time on, doesn't make as much as like a single contemporary romance that I wrote in 2016.
Right.
So financially, like I those years would have been much better, but it's also like it has like a really like hardcore fan base. So I
Yes,
can't
yeah.
say that
Mhm.
I regret writing them,
Mhm.
but and it's same with the Devil series. Like if I hadn't switched genres, like that's my bread and butter is the Devil series. And
Mhm.
so um I guess I don't really know what I would say about switching genres. It's not always going to work out for you
Right,
financially, but I think
right.
also as writers, we sometimes just get really bored and like
Mm.
I don't want to feel like I always have to write another Devil book.
Mhm.
And I don't think I would enjoy my job if I just had to keep spitting out one more
Right,
little bit funny enemies to lovers. Like, so you got to
Mhm.
do what
right,
keeps you sane too.
right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes.
And, those books are not I mean, they're not just they are hilarious, but they are not just a laugh a minute. That's what I love about your writing. Your writing is very layered and very, emotional. And so, I do love that. So, it's not like you completely switched. You pivoted more
Yeah.
than anything. Yeah.
And you were one of the first people I sent that book to when I wrote it because I was like, I've never tried to write anything funny before, so I have no clue if I've succeeded.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was hilarious.
Sometimes it takes a while to find your perfect match for your voice or to find your voice,
Yeah.
and so sometimes I think it's maybe good to try some different things even though all the wisdom is just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
If you never get out of your lane, you may never find your sweet spot.
Like, look at Rebecca Yarros, right? Like,
Yes.
she wrote in a completely different genre, and I'm sure she's very happy that she's
She is super happy, I think. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like you can't like people will say stay in your lane, but
Mhm.
like some of people's most amazing successes have come from not doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And when you pivot like that and it lines up with what the market is wanting, that's when you get this huge breakout thing, which is what you've had. Just
Mhm.
really breakout success with this series. And so what do you wish you'd known about becoming a breakout success? Has it been different? Is it harder? Is there more pressure? Is there not more pressure?
I don't know if I would consider myself a
I
breakout.
do, and I think a lot of people do. So just take it and
Just
yeah.
roll with it.
Um, I I don't know. No, I wouldn't say there's any more pressure. I no, there's not. There's the only pressure I think is like internal, just because, and it's just more related to like, um, I know how much. A lot of it's just financial, but I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I know how much money I can make if I can kick out this many books. And
Yeah.
for me, just like it's just my personality, but for me, the
Yeah.
pressure of needing to do it makes it so that I'm kind of get locked up and can't do it.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I enjoyed writing more back before I was doing like financially well at it, which is I don't know why that is.
I know exactly what you're saying because there is this job title that goes I mean, it transfers it from this fun little thing to this job, and a
Right.
lot's riding on it, and it's not just you. Your readers' expectations, your publicist's expectations, your publisher's I mean, all of those things, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that, so it's good
Yeah. Well,
pressure, but it's still different.
Mhm.
and I think the other aspect of it that I've discovered more recently is that like the more you are out there and the more you're being seen, it's kind of like the more like I mean, you get a lot more people being like, "Oh, I love your books," but you also get a lot more people saying like online like, "Oh, you're so old and ugly."
Yeah.
Horrible things.
Mhm.
Like, it's like you're getting more exposure and solid 10% of it is like bad. Like you were talking about. For me as an introvert, this is terrible. I want nothing to
Yes.
do with any of it.
Yeah.
Well, how do you handle that? Do you have certain things you just have learned to ignore, or just not, you don't go to certain places, or how do you
Yeah,
deal with
well,
it?
yeah, I mean, like, I honestly and I think that all authors have been told this, and it's harder to do, but I generally just avoid Goodreads like the plague.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna look, and, even, like, I don't go there when you need to pull for your reviews. I have
Yeah.
somebody else pull for my reviews, so I don't have to look.
Mhm.
Um, and I have somebody who helps me, like, with Instagram and kind of, like, goes through the
Mhm.
comment.
Kind of a layer
Yes.
for
Yeah.
you.
You
Yeah.
put how much would you say your publicist I mean, I know you give a lot of credit to Nina, but, like, how much would you say she's helped you, um, like, with this series and the success because I know you wrote that first book, but did you have a thought of doing, like, more books? And how hard was that to add books to that series if you didn't really have a thought of doing more books?
But I mean, like with the I feel like working with this particular publicity company, Valentine, has been
Mhm.
amazing
Yeah.
because I think that at that point in my career, I didn't have like a lot of bloggers who knew of me or were willing to read
Mhm,
me,
mhm.
but they were willing to read me because they knew that company.
Yeah, yeah,
So it was
Mhm.
kind of like I was being vouched for.
yeah.
And I think that got me a lot of exposure. It was such a weird year for me because I wrote that during the pandemic,
Mhm.
and it was like this really bizarre, prolific year. So I wrote during that time. I had written a tiny part of the next book in the Devil series. I had written a significant part of The Summer We Fell. I had written two vampire books, like all in this 1 year period.
Oh,
And I
wow.
mean, I haven't published the vampire books. So it was actually really, I don't know what it was about the pandemic, but for me, it was like this like creative, like, I
Mhm.
don't know. So it was actually writing those books was pretty easy. And I think also I had been writing all this like really angsty, and they were much lighter, so they were fun. It was a nice break.
Yeah, and you can tell they're fun. You can tell you enjoyed writing them. They're just a fun romp. Um, yeah, the introverted and was super creative during the pandemic.
I mean, I feel terrible saying that because I know people suffered and people like lost family members, but I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. I don't have to go out. I don't have to go to any dumb school plays. I don't have to go to parent meetings.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can look like crap.
I mean, it was a horrible time in many
Yeah.
Yeah.
ways for a lot of people. And, it had its downsides for me too. But a lot of people were like, this is amazing because it cut out so much of the busyness of our lives for a while.
Right.
So
Yeah.
people were able to kind of reassess what they were doing, what they really wanted to do. I think that's why so many people changed jobs afterwards. They said there was
Yeah.
just a huge drop in or huge increase in people being like, I'm quitting. I'm going to go do this other thing. Like maybe write a book or something.
And, and like, I mean, and it really feels terrible to say because like I could see how it was affecting my kids and that I wanted my kids to be back in school and I can see the ways that it's kind of screwed up a lot of like socialization for especially like college age kids who miss this like really vital period.
Right.
But yeah, for me, it was like I had all of my kids home and um it felt terrible, but I was like, I kind of had to keep it secret, but I was like, I love this. So. And I wrote all these books.
Well, getting back to the books, I wanted to ask you about, you said you don't really do TikTok, right?
Yeah.
People think that you have to, especially a romance writer, has to be on TikTok. So how do you get around that?
So the funny thing is this, like we tell ourselves that we have to do all these things. And the problem is that you ramp up, right? And you start doing this stuff and then you're scared to stop doing it because what if I stop doing it and I lose all my money? So I had this thing where I had some issues at the end of December where I was getting like rude comments and it was Christmas time. And I just shut it all down. I shut down my Instagram. I shut down my TikTok. And like, I wasn't doing TikTok personally, but I was paying somebody to do posts for me. And I shut down, and I was paying somebody a lot to post for me on Instagram. I shut it all down and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make no money for the next couple of weeks or however long I do this. What's going to happen? And my income went up. My income went up, not an insubstantial amount, and it stayed up. And I only went back on Instagram this week and there was a little drop. So I'm like, so all these
maybe
things,
no
like,
more.
I mean, in between like what I was paying for the Instagram person and then what I was paying a TikTok person, I was spending close to $2,000 a month. So I'm saving that $2,000 and I'm making more money. So I think that we tell ourselves these, and I know there are people who were like, I did this TikTok and all of a sudden I'm making insane amount of money, but I was never that person. And I was just scared to like, once you start doing something, you're really scared to pull it back. But I think it's worth sometimes pulling back, especially if you're putting a lot of money into it.
Yeah, just checking to see if it really, what impact it really has. We had, I think it was Gail Carriger on a couple of years ago, and she had done the same thing. She cut off I think she turned off all her ads, I think. And she said it made no difference at all. And she was like, well, why am I spending all this money? Or, it could be spending all this time because your time is just as valuable as your money sometimes.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And that's something that I think going forward, like for instance, if I decide to try like I do have one ad running on AMS, but I don't normally do AMS ads because I'm just bad at them. But like if I try to do something, I'll probably try it on a backlist book just to see, because then I know that there's no other like confounding factors, right? And I don't have to worry that it's not because somebody did a TikTok on it. It's because it's just, and actually that's the way I did. Like I did have an influencer. I tested it on a backlist book just to see like if it would make a difference. And to be honest, like my sales on that one backlist book when she posted on it probably tripled for about 4 days. So, but I think it definitely merits testing.
I think it's always better when somebody else is talking about your book anyway. And I see people talking about your book on TikTok all the time. So, that helps.
Yeah.
Have you seen people that have come to you through the Devil series go back to your backlist?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. That is so great. Because, it is different, but the writing style is the same. I mean, it's,
Yeah. And they're all like, even the Devil series is a little bit angsty.
You can't get rid of that. You don't like happy characters.
And yet you write rom-com. Interesting. But that makes a good rom-com, right? Because if everything's hunky-dory all the time, then there's really no story.
Right. No, that's like as soon as the characters are happy at the end of the book, I'm bored. Like I'm like done. And then if somebody, my editor or whoever will be like, we need to see them together for a little while.
I've noticed that the opposite of that like some stories and TV shows start with the characters together and you see them happy and then they break up. It's a second chance romance. Sometimes you see them in the beginning together happy. And I watched one of those the other day and I was like, I can't enjoy this first part because I know they're just going to break up, because if this is the whole story, we're done. There's nothing here. So
there is nothing here.
Something horrible is going to happen.
Right. That's why I've never watched that movie that what's his name? The guy who played Kylo Ren in Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
that movie he did with Scarlett Johansson, you know it's all gonna
Yeah.
be sad from
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, are you running you're running one AMS ad, are you running Facebook ads?
Yeah, so I'm doing
Yeah.
Facebook ads only to 2 series. No, 3 series. Just
Okay.
to the first in series, and, um, yeah, I don't know, like, sometimes I'll be running ads and when I stop the ad, nothing changes.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm scared to stop doing it, but
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember asking, David Gaughran, like, when I first put out my books, I think it was Rockstar that was out, and, I was making good money for 1 book
right,
out, and, I was like, "I don't know if these ads are working," and he said, "Well, the only way to really tell is to stop the ad," and I was like, "No,
right,
no, no
right.
way."
At least for me, Facebook ads don't work the way they used to. Like, I used to
No,
always
they
get,
don't.
like a 1
Yeah,
to 4 return, and now
yeah,
it's like 1 to 2,
yeah.
1 to 3, so, yeah.
They're
It
not as
probably would be wise for me to try stopping a few and see what happens.
yeah, but why? Why would you do that?
Well, I have another question for you that's not on the
Yeah.
list. You talked about you've written several books, but you haven't released them. Do you normally do that? Do you normally hold books, or do you
I
write the whole series? How do you do your writing stuff?
Yeah, no, I've got probably at least 12 complete books on my laptop that I've never published. Um, and it just because,
Crazy.
like, there's something about them that I need to fix or that I don't like, and so I'm like, "Oh, I'll just," and, like, actually 2 of them are way off trope. They're like a kidnapping thing.
Right.
So or way off brand, I guess I should have said. So I'm kinda just like, I don't know if my audience will like that and, like, if I should just
Mhm.
publish it under a different name. So, but yeah, if I'm not 100% happy with a book, I don't wanna publish it.
Do you
Mm.
think the vampire books will, pardon the pun, see the light of day?
Yes, actually I do.
Good. Good, good, good. And I
Uh-huh.
will say that your devil books are very trope heavy. I mean, they are trope heavy, which I love. I mean, it's very I don't know, it's comforting. It's
And
like readers
I
feel the
wasn't
same.
really necessarily even trying to write to trope back then. And especially like micro tropes weren't a thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think that micro tropes exist because we all happen to like these tiny little things, right? Like a guy who
yeah,
wears glasses or the he
yeah,
takes care of her scene. And
yeah.
so
Mhm.
I just got lucky and happened to like those things and put them into my books.
Yeah.
Well, and the heroine in Deal with the Devil is so she is such a smart mouth. Oh, she is so sassy, and it would just I mean, it just sets the whole thing up so well.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
I feel like it's hard to get away with that sometimes because readers don't necessarily like a sarcastic heroine.
Right.
You know, they want
Mhm.
her to be very nice and they want him to be the only funny one.
You pull it off.
Well,
You
thank you.
pull it off. Yeah.
Well, you don't want your heroine to be too boring. I mean,
No.
you need to have a little
Right.
sassiness there.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the thing for me, like, I don't know about you guys, but I kinda don't respect, like, a heroine who lets herself get walked on. There's a very well-known
Mhm.
book where the heroine just kinda stays with her boyfriend, and he's awful, and he's abusive, and you're just like, "What
What
is,"
are you
it's
doing?
like,
Yeah.
if I can't respect the character, I don't wanna read about her.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um
Mhm.
Oh, and that's the other thing I was thinking though is and I was thinking about this earlier today is one thing that I think has changed a lot is because of Kindle Unlimited, you know, they can get your book and they can only read one page. And I find that I do that a lot more as a reader than I used
Yeah.
to. When I
Yeah.
was paying
Mhm.
like 15.99 for a book at
Mhm.
Target, I was probably gonna at least give it a couple chapters, right?
Yeah. Right.
And now I can pick up a book and read the first 3 paragraphs.
Mhm.
So, I think making sure that and I'm gonna try to work on this for myself too, but to try to make those first couple of paragraphs even be really, really strong and
Yeah.
be like, get that if you can, get that couple there.
Mhm.
Because I
Mhm.
think the days of being able to write an entire chapter where a girl is talking to her best friend
Yeah.
are those days are over as if I
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
Yeah.
having been on a break and thinking about especially my bride's books, but really the other books too, um, how, what made them successful, I mean, I get they're together within the first yeah, first page, first couple of pages, um, because that's just I guess that's how I like it, but also
Mhm.
I was kinda told, when I was being taught to write by that RWA group, like, you can't have 10 pages or a whole chapter where they're not even like they're in the same room, they're not together. Get them together. Like that's the meet cute. That's what people are reading for. I always do that especially within the first chapter. But I think that helps. I think it
And
helps.
it's, I mean, as a writer, it's really hard to do because a lot
It's
of times you
really
want to
hard.
set it
Yeah.
up. And like
Yeah.
in my book that comes out in May, I had initially written like an entire chapter where she's talking to her dad about this trip that he's making her go on and arguing with him. And I ended up cutting that entire chapter and just like releasing it as backstory as it went on because I like it's exact, I wanted that first paragraph to be her running into this guy in the airport and then just absolutely hating each other. Um,
Yeah.
because nobody's, if you're reading on Kindle Unlimited, you're like, I'm not going, if I'm there for a romance, I don't want to read about a girl having lunch with her dad. Like,
Nope.
Well, even just that description, I'm all for found family and family relationships, but that compared to she runs into a guy at the airport and they don't like each other and don't get along, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Whereas
right.
the dad, I'm like, oh, that's kind of sweet. He wants her to go on a trip. But the other
Yeah.
one, I'm like, I'm more into
Yeah.
that.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, this sounds awful, but I think readers actually do like when they have like this, like a character arc and they've got their families and they've got like these deeper things behind it. But I do feel like you kind of, I'm not going to say trick them, but you sort of trick them into coming into your book with like the most appealing piece.
Yeah.
And then it turns out to be more than that.
Well, what about launching, Elizabeth? How are you launching these books now? Do you have a
Poorly.
formula, a plan?
No plan at all. And my PA will all be, my PA has written me, but she's so wonderful, Christine Estevez, who I love. And she'll be like, say, I made you this spreadsheet to reach out to people for your book. And I just like, she's written me like 5 times. Here's that spreadsheet again. And I just haven't sent it out, like for newsletter swaps.
Yeah.
But generally it's, yeah, like newsletter swaps. And then I have Valentine do like the ARC team stuff because disorganized and I just don't want to do it. I do ARCs 2 weeks before. I've been doing a promo box. I honestly like I don't know how successful those are. I think that I've seen some like in like author groups like where some people have done the over under and sometimes they work for people and sometimes they really don't make a difference.
Right. So you mean promo box would be going out to influencers or something like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I've done that for my past few books. Like it's like they go out to like 60, 70 people and then
Yeah.
um and
Yeah.
I honestly I don't know if it works or if it doesn't. It's a lot of money. So
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be interesting to if you could figure out if which would be better, a promo box to influencers or something like a Kickstarter or, you know, direct sales on a store because they would seem to have different targets, and
yeah,
maybe the influencers might bring in more people eventually, but
right.
the Kickstarter is like a big launch. Have you dabbled in Kickstarter or direct sales or anything like that?
So I actually have I think my store might even be live today for the yes, I
Congratulations.
did I did special editions for the Devil series and they're
Yeah.
beautiful. Like I'm not like a special edition person, but even I was like, oh, these are so pretty.
Yeah.
I
So
wasn't either, but when you see your own book, it's like, oh, it does look so good.
yeah, it's really pretty. So I we'll see how it goes, but I was at RAM and so many people were talking about, I mean, people are making an incredible amount of money on
Uh-huh.
special editions. Like
Right.
money that makes your it dwarfs your Amazon money.
Right.
Mhm.
So um and I mean it's all going to change I think because of the tariffs and whatnot, but
Mhm.
if you're ordering the books from overseas, you can get them relatively inexpensively and sell them for a lot.
Do you have sprayed edges and on
Yeah,
yours?
so I've got
Yeah.
sprayed edges, a dust jacket, end
Uh,
papers, like the whole thing.
oh,
They're
lovely.
so we'll see how it goes, but it's also a risk, right? Because you're putting all this money out up front. You don't know if you're going to get it back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, I haven't done Kickstarter, and I that seems very complicated to me. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. So
uh,
are you just selling those on your store or
yeah.
I did a couple Kickstarters and haven't had the desire to do any more, but selling on my
Did they
store
were they
works good.
successful or
Yeah, for a mystery. I mean, I'm not like some of the romance authors that are like stratospheric, but they did well and I made money and everything. And so that was good, but it is a ton of work. So lately I've just been launching on my store. My special edition goes on my store and you can get it there first. And then I launch wide later.
And I think that's one of the things, like at RAM, I was so overwhelmed when I left. It was amazing, but people some people just have this boundless energy. Like I listened to Willow Winters talk and
Oh,
like, the amount of effort she makes with her store. And she's like, you can listen to her and she's just bubbling over. She's effervescent, right? Whereas like listening to her, I was just like, oh my God, just the thought of doing a tenth of that exhausts me.
yeah.
So you need to make sure that whatever you're doing lines up with your personality, and definitely like the work and the organization involved in like Kickstarters and all that is just
Yeah.
not me.
Oh,
So
Yeah. But that's good to know. Good to know where you need
about
to put your
yourself.
energy. Mm.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, we love to ask people, what do you think the best thing you've done to set yourself up for success has been?
oh. I mean, I feel like I ought to give you some really inspiring answer, but I mean, honestly, I think this is thanks to you, Jamie.
Oh.
I had never run a Facebook ad in my life. I just honestly believed that like it was all going to work out for me somehow, and then I took a little Jamie and Maria Lewis did a little class in this group on running Facebook ads, and I did it, and I was like, oh wow. Like, it was like I mean, that was back when Facebook, like, got you a lot farther than it
Yeah, it
does now,
was like
but I was like
2018 or something like that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but so running those Facebook ads, man, that did it. That was definitely what made it so that I didn't have to have another job, so
That's so great. That's really great. Well, that's great to hear. It makes me feel
Yeah.
good. So I'm glad we did that.
thank you, Jamie.
Well,
I'll
this
send
has
your money
been
later.
Yeah.
this has been a lot of fun. It's been
Oh,
great to
it's been
talk to you.
so much fun. Yeah. Yeah, it has. Tell
So,
everybody where they can find out more about you and your book.
Oh,
And
yeah, just, I'm Elizabeth O'Rourke on Instagram or Elizabeth O'Rourke Books on Facebook.
all right.
all
Very good.
right.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks for having me. This was fun. It was good to catch up with you,
It
Jamie, after
was.
it's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been a while since the pandemic, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So,
Well, we will have those links in the show notes. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to wishidknownthenforwriters.com/support. And that will be at wishidknownthenforwriters.com will be where the show notes are. And just thank you everyone for listening. And we'll see everybody next week. Bye.
bye.
Everyone.